Hi, this is Kara from the Special Needs Mom podcast.
And this is Angela from Especially Organized, Sensible Solutions for Special Needs Moms.
We have this heart for special needs moms. And so we thought, you know what, let's combine forces. And we have come up with what we're calling the Purge Party. And you can pretty much guess what it is. It's a party where we're going to come together and we're going to purge, or in general, accomplish a goal, a small goal together. So we have set this for January 27th, starting at 8 o'clock for my Pacific Coast people.
Which means 11 o'clock for all of you on the East Coast. So this is an opportunity. If you have something on your to-do list that has just been stuck there and you are wanting to move it up on the list, you're wanting to tackle, maybe it's a space or an area of your home or a category in your home that has just needed a little time and attention. This is your opportunity for you to be online with us while you work and have access for us to help you answer your questions, help guide you, and just serve you for those 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can tell like what we've designed is just this very high level of support for that project that you just haven't been able to tackle on your own. The thing that we are envisioning is that you get to leave this purge party feeling so accomplished because you did the thing. You started the year off getting that thing done that you were stuck on last year. And so it's a momentum builder, if you will. You can go ahead and sign up. We have a link ready for you. And we are offering this for $40 for the whole experience.
Absolutely. And we hope you'll join us. I think it's going to be really fun. It's going to be a great group of moms of special needs kids. So we all get each other. We all have an understanding of what it's like to have something on our to-do list, but just we haven't been able to tackle it yet. So I hope that you will join us. We're super excited to bring this to you, and we are thrilled to work with you.
All right. We'll see you all there. Hi, I'm Kara Riska, life coach, wife, and the mother of 4 incredible and unique kids. It wasn't all that long ago that my son received a diagnosis that had my world come crashing down. I completely lacked the ability to see past the circumstances, which felt impossible, and the dreams I once had for my life and family felt destroyed. Fast forward past many years of surviving and not at all thriving, and you'll see a mom who trusts that she can handle anything that comes her way and has access to the power and grace that once felt so completely lacking. I started the Special Needs Mom podcast to create connection and community with moms who find themselves up against what feels impossible. My intention is to spark the flare of possibility in your own life and rekindle the dreams that you hold impossible now. This isn't a podcast about your special needs child. This is a podcast about you. If you're a mom who feels anxious, alone, or stuck, then you are in the right place. Welcome. Well, hello there, and welcome back to the 40th episode of the Special Needs Mom podcast. I'm really excited for you to meet my guest of this week's episode. Her name is Casey Waugh, and I'll tell the whole story in the episode, but I got off of an IEP meeting and I just happened to see a reel that she had posted, and it moved me so deeply. And that's why I asked her to be a guest on my show. She'll share all about it, and you'll get to hear a unique perspective from her as she is an occupational therapist and what she sees when she sees a special needs mom across the table. And it was really, really fun getting to talk to her. And I know that if you haven't seen her reel, that you will love it. It's amazing how 30 seconds watching a few words pop up on a screen can so deeply connect you with somebody. As her formal bio, I'll share that like I said, she's a pediatric occupational therapist from Pittsburgh with 9 years of experience helping parents support their kids through daily life. Her passion is to elevate parent confidence through education and community, because every parent and every child deserves a safe place to belong. I love that. Casey graduated with a Master's of Science in Occupational Therapy and a minor in Special Education. She has worked in outpatient therapy, inpatient rehabilitation, early intervention, and specialized school settings, and has focused on developing skills and certifications in sensory processing and feeding treatment. And beyond that, Casey shared with me that she grew up with a sibling on the autism spectrum, and she additionally is a foster mom, or has been a foster mom, and cared for a child who needed some extra support. I've recognized that she is the real deal. She's living her life, serving, giving back, and showing up for both parents and kids. I think you're really going to love listening to her story and this episode. Before we get right into it, I want to tell you about two things. The first one is, you may not know, if you're not on my email list, that I have been sending out what I'm calling 4 in 4. So 4 quick and easy ways to apply the awareness and the information that I give in each episode, whether it's a solo episode or an interview style. 4 ways that you can apply and take this work from just listening to it to actually implementing and acting on it. 4 in 4 is, the idea is, in under 4 minutes, you can accomplish each of the 4 things that I put out there. The idea is that if you just limit it to 4 minutes, it seems easy. Remember back to the habit series, if you listen to that, we want to make something easy and attainable. And that's what I've done in this email structure that I am doing. So I send a weekly email every Friday after the episode comes out. If you want to get on that list, all you need to do is go to the show notes of this episode. You'll see an easy link to put your email in so that you can receive all the information that I prepare for you each week to apply each episode. Additionally, I'm going to put a little teaser out there because I have some really fun things planned through the summer. I have a bonus episode coming out. I'm just really having a lot of fun thinking about what you each need, what you each desire, and creating content and programs and workshops that will serve you and meet you where you are. Let's get in the show. Welcome to Casey Waugh. Casey, welcome to the show. I told a couple people about the reel that you produced, and they said, "Oh my gosh, I know exactly what you're talking about. And I can't believe that you're having her on your show." And I said, "I am. This is so exciting." So I feel like you're like my first celebrity on the show.
Oh my
So
goodness.
welcome.
Don't say that. It's such a strange thing that this reel and it started on TikTok, that it kind of exploded the way that it did. Wasn't anticipating that. And it's just been a weird experience.
Weird good?
Yes, definitely good.
Okay.
But it's definitely also been really eye-opening as far as, I think right now on the TikTok app, there's like over 8,700 comments. And there are so many parents who say, "I thought I was the only one who cried in these meetings," or "I didn't know that other people felt this way," or "This is exactly what I needed to hear." And it was just like, oh my gosh, there are so many people who experience this feeling, and not enough professionals who are telling them that their kids are more than these scores, and they're more than the lists of issues and problems that we have to go through in these meetings. So it was just very eye-opening, I guess. But it's been good to get that information out there and let other people see, like, you're not alone in this.
I want to give people a little bit more context. But before we get into that, I do want to more talk actually really in depth on that, on all of that. I want to give people a little bit of understanding of who you are. And so you're actually I do count you as a special needs mom because you shared with me that you were a foster mom. And I feel like I don't think that goes away. Like, now you are always a special needs mom. And so I would love to hear a little bit just about who you are as a person, as a human, and how you are on this earth.
Well, in 1989, I was, no, I'm just kidding. So I am an occupational therapist, and I graduated in 2012, and I have worked in pediatrics since then. I've always known I wanted to work with kids. I've always known I wanted to work with kids with special needs, with families with special needs, just because I grew up in a family with a brother with special needs. And I was always jealous of him when he got to go to OT and go on the swings. And I kind of, as I went through high school, I wasn't sure where I wanted to go with my career, but OT just fits all of my check boxes. So I am currently working in an approved private school. But before that, I worked in outpatient. I worked a little bit in inpatient in cyber school. I have worked in early intervention. So I've done a wide range of ages and a lot of different diagnoses. And so, yeah, that's where I'm currently working in a school. So I've been very involved in the IEP process. This year was my first year at the school. But every kid at our school has an IEP. So it's, we live it every day. So
that seems like a lot to manage. That seems like a lot of individual education. But amazing. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like everyone's going to be like their eyes and ears and like teaching plan is going to be always surrounded by how are we accommodating all of these students? Because that's kind of, that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing about you and the random way I asked that question. So it's funny. So I can't even count how many hours that I have logged with my son, or I should say my son has logged in OT and I have brought him. So I feel like I have a lot of experience, but yet I don't know that I could like really accurately tell somebody what exactly an OT does. Cause I feel like what don't they do? Like they do everything. So tell me in your words, how you describe what you do and what you don't do.
Yeah. I think when we were in school, we were told like, people are still, it's becoming more aware, like people are aware that OT exists, but you still have to have like your 30-second elevator pitch of what OT is. So I think the best way to explain it is that occupational therapists help people live their lives to the fullest and to reach their goals in whatever roles they live in. So that's why it can be so broad. We can work with a kid, their roles are like as a family member, a friend, they need to play, they need to go to school, they need to engage with friends. So those are the things that we work on. They need to be able to be independent in those roles. With an adult, it's very different. Maybe they need to get to their job. Maybe they need to access something. So it really depends on what the individual's roles and goals are. And we just work with whatever that is. So that's why it is so broad and we can do so much. But at the heart of it, we're just helping people live their lives in the best way that they can.
That is a very helpful explanation. And now for me, I'm like, no, that's why it says occupational, like, because this is how these humans are being occupied by their role. That makes so much sense. Wow. That clears up a lot for me. Are there subspecialties?
Yeah, anything people still say like, are you, do you help people get jobs? But if you think about whatever anyone's occupation is, it could be a job, but for a kid, their occupation is to play or their occupation is to eat, sleep. It is to go to school. So that's why, if you think anything that occupies your time, we can help with that.
I love that. It almost reminded me how like back in the day, it was like, there's an app for that. You're like, we can help with that. That is, like I said, so very helpful. What skill or occupation, shall I say, is your favorite to meet with a child, assuming since you're pediatrics, to meet and like to support somebody on? What gives you the most joy?
I think for me, I have really enjoyed helping families with mealtimes, with feeding issues, because it's so ingrained in family life. In early intervention, so that's the 0 to 3 age population, we had a ton of babies and toddlers who were struggling with transitioning to food, to using utensils. We saw a lot of kids for feeding issues. And I really enjoy helping parents just like recognize how their stress impacts how their child eats and just building a culture of successful meal times, because it can be like the simplest shift in attitude or the simplest way you phrase something or present something, and they'll just see that their child is more open to it. And so meal times they're challenging, but I find a lot of good success helping parents feed their kids. That's something I really missed about being in early intervention, because we just coached parents. That was the whole piece of it, was parent education. And I don't get as much of that in the school or in outpatient because it's just a different model. But yeah, so I think feeding is probably one of my favorite things to do.
Maybe it's because, and we don't necessarily have like actual like feeding issues. I think just we have mealtime issues. We have a lot of behavioral issues around food. And so maybe I should fly you out here and you can like,
Sure.
I might need one-on-one in like, what do we call this? ISS services, individualized, specialized services for meal times.
Yeah. Meals are just something that they happen every day, multiple times a day. And if you have a hard time with one or more of your kids participating while sitting at the table, tolerating what you give them, it can just, I mean, as a parent, that's super stressful every day.
Yeah. I totally, like when you say like helping the parents with that, I totally get the impact that would have on not just that child's life, but the entire, like mealtime is a very family oriented experience. And so if something's not working, it impacts the whole system.
Yeah.
There's so many different directions I want to take this conversation. Which one do I do first? Okay. I want to touch on something you said, and then I want to jump into talking more about that reel and telling everybody more about it. The first thing I'm curious about is that essentially you might have said in a slightly different words, but you said how parents are being impacts the children. Like you were talking about mealtime. And so to give you a little bit more background for me, so I'm a coach, I'm a life coach in specific, and my methodology or my training specifically is in ontology, which is a very big word for saying who somebody's being or how somebody's being. And so I very much align with what you said about how a parent's being impacts the children. And I wouldn't say causes the child's behavior, but let's just say it influences, like a leader influences and inspires action. I would say who a parent's being can definitely influence and inspire a child's reaction. What are things that you've seen parents, and let's go specifically mothers, do to help align their being with how they want to show up for their children?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is just taking things more slowly, especially with little ones. I think the most engagement I had with parents where I can kind of speak to that is in early intervention. So the kids are 3 and under. They're very much in the space where they need an adult to help them regulate. They're not able to do that on their own. So the parents need to be aware and able to recognize how they impact their child. So I think it comes first to that awareness of the reciprocity in that. And I guess with mealtimes in particular, since that can be such a high stress environment, I always just bring the example that when your stress is increased, the appetite goes down. Like they are just opposite hormones in your body. Cortisol goes up, appetite goes down. And when I put it in those phrases,
it doesn't seem to go that same way for me.
No, well, I mean, I think like if you think about a day in your life when you had something crazy happen, like your wedding day, or you had a funeral and you're like, oh my gosh, I did not eat all day at my wedding. I did not eat. Drank a ton of wine. And then when it all hit me at once, I was like, oh my goodness, I had a totally empty stomach. And the bartender kept giving me glasses of wine. So you can see how that ended up.
Oh yeah,
but
I can
my
imagine.
stress, it just impacts that. So I think one thing to like with moms, well, I guess, and also dads too, just recognizing how your attitude is impacting the child, bringing awareness to that first, and then just slowing down. and recognizing how just your body language can directly impact how your child is responding to something that they may consider stressful.
That speaks to me a lot. So slowing down, which is interestingly something that I struggle with the most. And I think a lot of people do. And I know that something was very critical for me to really make sure that how I showed up was setting my children up for success, was making sure that I created an environment where I knew I had enough time to be slow. Right. So if I woke up late and if I was feeling like stressed for time to get out the door on time, then I mean, it's just so dramatic on what I notice it's like, even if I think I'm being cool, calm, and collect, it's like the inner being of, oh my gosh, we've got to get out of the house. It seeps out and it like definitely slops on other people. So anything else that you can think about? So besides slowing down?
I think making sure that you, as a mom or as a dad, you're recognizing that your role as a parent that's your most important role for your child. Like, I think sometimes parents think that they have to be all these different people, like, and they have to be the speech therapist, the OT, the PT at home. They have to be the teacher at home. They have to be all of these things because they want their child to succeed, and who wouldn't? But that's taking a step back and recognizing that your time and your presence with your kids is wonderful, and you don't have to have every moment being some kind of therapeutic learning opportunity. You're not going to fail your kids by just sitting on the floor and playing with them. So I think also bringing attention to that, how building relationships outside of these stressful and hard times helps those harder times get a little bit easier, because you have that relationship that's not just, oh, she's going to ask me to do something else, or, I have to make sure I'm performing well, that kind of thing, if that makes sense. I don't know.
It does make a lot of sense. I can picture that, where it's like, if you actually just know how to just be and connect with your child with no end game, with no purpose, then I do feel like it creates a different relationship than if the purpose is always teaching and learning, and which obviously is a part of being a mom. But I think what I hear you saying is, when we have, especially as parents of special needs children, there's always an opportunity to really kind of close the gap, if you will, on something, and that never really goes away. So what you're saying is just let that be, as the mom, and let all the therapists support in all the different ways they can. Okay, now let's get to this reel. Okay, so I want to, we talked a little bit about it, and I think some people who've seen it would obviously totally be like, oh my gosh. But then for people that have not seen it, they'll be like, what are you guys talking about? So let me tell you my experience with it, and then you can fill in. We'll of course talk more about it. So this is now, let's call it 2 months ago. I was just getting out of a multiple hour IEP meeting for my son. And I don't know if this was like the second of the series of IEP meetings. He's a very complex IEP. And I was doing pretty good. Because he's in middle school now, I feel like I've learned how to support myself through this. And so I feel like I would have given myself a pretty good grade on that. And I got off the meeting and I just kind of sat in my chair and just kind of vegetated for a bit. And what I do when I vegetate is I hopped on Instagram, and I just happened to come across this reel that you did. I'll describe the reel the best I can. You can add in. Basically, this reel was you sitting crying, right? Like you were basically like expressing your like sadness and overwhelm. And the music like just really like amplified everything, as music does. And the words were saying, like, somehow I knew that you were an OT. I don't know if you wrote that, but basically like, I see you, Mom, on the other side of the table. I see you receiving this news of the result or assessment after assessment that's telling you your child's not adequate, or maybe not adequate, but low, which I don't think anyone really like wants to hear. At the end of the first one that I saw, the reel that I saw, it said, "You are enough." it was interesting because I don't know that I was questioning that I was enough necessarily in that moment. I mean, other times for sure I am, but I think, but just what your real, how it spoke to me was that there were humans on the other side of the table that really held me in the regard that of like, I guess, I don't know, it felt like compassion. It felt like care. And while we have a great team and I'm very happy with I'd say most everything, there was something just about hearing it from you that it spoke so significantly to a very deep part of me because it just like broke me down. I was like crying within seconds. And so I'd love for you to even expand a little bit more about like, if there's anything else you want to add, but then also you touched in a little bit about the comments that you were receiving. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you've learned since releasing that. I know there was a second part to the reel as well, but
Yeah. So I we're doing IEPs on Zoom right now, obviously, as pretty much everybody is. And it's been a very interesting situation because anyone really, when it's your turn, you kind of, everyone else is staring at you, which happens around a table as well, but it seems more intense almost when you're on a screen. I'm not sure, but we were with this mom who this was her first IEP meeting with us in our school. And she, throughout the meeting, she was very invested and very involved. And when she wanted to make a comment at one point, she just started crying and she couldn't get the words out. And I am very empathetic and I feel things that other people feel. So I started to tear up and I could just feel through the screen, like we weren't even in the same room, and I could just feel the weight of her trying to decide what to say, how to express her fears, her concerns. And we have a great team as well. And I think that we tried our best to assure her, like, we see all of the good things that your son is doing. We were able to blow off all of these things that he could do. But when you're sitting in those meetings that we know we have a time limit on, or we have to get it all through this information, we have 4 other ones this week. As professionals, we do this so often that we forget that this could be the first time that this parent is experiencing this. And it's unfortunate that we can kind of get into, okay, we're going through the motions. And there are so many parents who have children who have IEPs. So my goal was just to put out into the world that your child is not defined by these things that we have to document on. We have to prove that the educational program that we have in place is what he needs or she needs. So it's necessary, but it's not all that they are. And also just to touch on that fact that as moms and dads, you are the best parent for your child. And when you leave these meetings feeling defeated or like what should I have done this? What if I did that? What if I didn't do the right thing? That staying in that feeling can really, it's just, you're not alone in that. And it's okay to feel those feelings, but staying there can be really harmful to your own mental health. And then we're going back to like how that impacts your kids. So just recognizing that you're not alone and that you are enough and that your child is a whole and they are not these scores. So that's kind of where it came from, because I feel very deeply for when other people are crying, I cry. And I just felt so touched by this mom just wanting the best, wanting the world for her son. But just wasn't sure how to get there. And so I put it on TikTok, and the next day it was like, I'd refresh the screen and there was like 1,000 views a minute. And I don't even know how the algorithm works, why it got picked up, I don't understand any of that. I didn't know that you could download it. Like somebody must have downloaded it and put it on Facebook, because then people were sending it to me on Facebook, like, hey, I saw you on, is this you? So that was strange. And it was just, I then put it on Instagram. So it was kind of later on there because they had to be cut into 2 because of the time limit. And so then more people were commenting there, and it just was so, I don't know how else to say that it was really encouraging to me to see that other people could say, I thought I was the only one, but like, oh my goodness, look at all of these people who feel the same way, or this is what I needed to hear. Thank you so much. So it was, like I said, a strange feeling, but I'm so glad that I was able to at least verbalize that you are enough.
Well, thank you. It was very well received from, I know myself and many other mothers. I promised Lori Morris that I would say thank you personally. She was on I interviewed her earlier this week. I think it was. I can't remember. Maybe it was last week. The weeks are flying by. Okay. It also was really fun for me to get the perspective of you, a stranger, OT. Obviously, I don't know you, because I think I often experience in these meetings kind of having the thought, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what do these people think of me? I guess I was gonna say, not that I care that much, but I guess it's really just more curious. I'm like, gosh, what are they thinking right now that we have all these people in the room. We're all talking about this student who they adore, but yet has some significant areas of, we'll call them weaknesses, as the IEPs call them. I don't know, like it's like one of those things where I'm like, I want to know what they think. And so I think it was just kind of fun to hear like what you thought. And I guess maybe my hope was like, okay, I hope these other professionals that are on our team, like, I hope they think I'm doing a good enough job. Not that it wouldn't matter that much, but I mean, I'll be honest, I like approval. I like people to think I'm doing awesome. And so I guess in some way I felt like I got that from you. So thank you for that.
Yeah. I think that when it comes to like the team, quote unquote team of an IEP, like parents are obviously a major part of that. But at the same time, everybody else is like literally in the same building, and they're able to, they have a lot of information about what's happening on the day to day, and parents have a completely other part of that puzzle. But I can only imagine, I mean, I've never sat on the other side of an IEP table, but like how I just think it would be like going into a meeting that you don't know what the agenda is, and you're expected to like participate, and you feel like everybody else knows something that you don't.
Yeah. I was like, it's an interesting experience being. So I came from an industry where I was a minority as a woman, and often minority as Caucasian, but really more significantly, I always felt like I stood out more because I was a woman. So here I am in meetings after meetings with like me and like, I don't know, like 6, 8, 10 men. Usually, I mean, I'm getting older now, but prior to getting older, it was, I was also usually one of the younger people. And so I feel like I got used to being in what some would consider an intimidating environment. I know when I was younger, I was more intimidated by it. So I felt like I have a confidence and competence going into meetings. Meetings usually weren't very threatening to me. However, going into an IEP meeting, I wouldn't necessarily feel nervous, but it is a very threatening experience because just what you pointed to, it's like, what does everybody else know that I don't? And I think also to like the assurance or acceptance that I was just kind of saying that I've desired, there's this experience of, we know we're all on the same page trying to help the child, but I think it's like, as my child's parent, I feel like the responsibility that I have to be his primary teacher is so big. And so it's a really vulnerable experience, inviting this entire group of people that you don't know personally into taking that baton from you and like actually entrusting them with helping this child in these areas. So I don't know. Thank you for letting me kind of process that and think through that a little bit.
Yeah. And I my hope is that most people have really supportive, great teams, but from the comments that I've gotten on the TikToks and Reels, that is not the case, which is so unfortunate, and just sad. One comment, I wish I could find it, because I want to like respond to this person. She said she was not allowed to be on the call for her child's IEP because there were too many people on the phone. And I was like, I saw that comment, like now I'm like, that's not, you can't do that. But sometimes people think that the school is going to like always tell you all of your rights. Like they do tell you what your rights are as a parent because they have to give you the procedural safeguards. They have to give you that in some shape or form. But it like reminds me of like getting a document that you're like, okay, sign this really quick, and you don't ever actually read through it. And so I just was like, oh my gosh, like I cannot believe that they thought that that was okay. And she thought, I guess, like if the school says it. And so she wasn't allowed to be in the IEP. Now, that is one comment. Who knows the background of that? But a lot of the comments I got were like, okay, the school district did this. What happens if this happens? Or how do I get an educational advocate? Or like things that are just, how do I start the process? There's information out there about the law. You can find it on the internet, but it's not very easily digestible, I guess. So there's just, I feel like there's a gap in how to prepare parents, like just starting out, entering into special education. Like you just got a diagnosis. Here's what you're going to have to do at school. Let's go through this meeting. Okay, now you have to sign this. Okay, this is the goals. And it's just like information overload. And I can't imagine how like that could be processed efficiently if you don't have a good supportive team around you.
Yeah, it very much can be informational overload. Here's the other thing I think is interesting to what you're describing is I think that culturally we have a relationship to authority that many of us desire to follow the rules or have a relationship to authority where we don't want to essentially get in trouble. Mm-hmm. And so for this woman, let's just say that everything that she said was completely true and she was not allowed to be on the meeting. She would, one, have to know her right, but then she would also have to be willing to essentially push back and conflict with whoever was telling her something that wasn't in alignment with her actual right. And some people aren't willing to do that. A lot of people actually, that this comes up all the time in coaching, that the relationship to authority can be very threatening. And I think also now as we're learning and talking so much, as I'm learning, I should say, and the society is talking so much about people of different races having a very different relationship to authority than somebody like myself who was kind of in that position of white privilege. So I think that's an interesting side of it as well. I want to switch gears a little bit, and you had shared a little bit earlier about this in general, but I wanted to go back to it. And you just talked a little bit about therapy as a part of life and not a way of life. And before I let you kind of answer a question I have for you, I wanted to tell you a very funny story about one of our experiences in OT. And I think it might make you cringe a little bit, but it makes, I think it's going to make my people laugh. Okay. So my son is 11 and this happened probably, let's call it 2 years ago. He gets services, OT services. He's now on a consult basis. So we don't go frequently, but we'll go in there. And I don't remember what the goal is. I think it was around brushing our teeth, but I can't remember specifically. And so this gal, well-intended, but not somebody that I had a lot of familiarity with, gave us a series of facial exercises for my son. So it was like all these like manipulating his lips and the side of his cheeks and all these different things. Now, to give some people some context, from a functionality standpoint, his mouth is very functional. His speech is very functional. I mean, I think we have more of a compliance issue when it comes to actually caring for his teeth than we have a myofascial issue. Mm-hmm. Not that he couldn't benefit from some of this stuff. She probably was completely right. And so she proceeded to show me all these exercises for probably 15 minutes, showing me the details, like not too hard, not too soft, not too soft. She wanted me to do them like twice a day. And in my head, I'm thinking, lady, you are nuts. This is never going to happen. And I don't know why I didn't interrupt her and just be like, I'm so sorry, but we're just not going to do any of this. I think think I just thought, this is going to be easier just to let her finish and just to walk out and like throw those papers in the trash and laugh about it. Because I was like, does she have any idea what our house looks like at 7:00 when we're just trying to get our teeth brushed? Like we are not going to be doing myofascial soft massages 2 times a day. So anyhow, so it made you laugh. I'm glad I made you laugh. And so I bring this story up because I feel like I don't know if I've talked to a lot of people, but I feel like I've heard rumorings of it, of like, cause kind of parents like me laughing at like, how much practice or therapy do you actually do from what's assigned to you? So what's your perspective on this as somebody that's assigned or provided recommendations on what somebody might want to do on their own when they're not with you?
I think the biggest thing that comes to mind here is that, from an OT perspective, we can do so many things, but we always have to have some kind of functional goal for insurance to cover it, or for whatever reason, we need to have something that we can measure of why we are doing what we're doing. And a lot of times it comes in the form of things like brushing teeth or tying shoes or handwriting or something that's very like, we can measure the output. But I think like, especially in outpatient, that was my first job. Kids would come to see me in a clinic. I was very much like, I am this amazing OT that just graduated from school and I know all of this stuff and I go to all these courses and now I'm going to tell parents how to do this at home because, we should educate the parents. And I would probably be that person. And like,
I
not
think you would
even
have had a little bit more, at least a little bit more sense. This lady was not picking up body language at all.
Yeah. So I think I very quickly realized like, when I would because also depending on your setting, you might have 5-10 minutes to talk to a parent. So if I'm like just constantly throwing things like you should do this at home, I very quickly realized that was not number one, like the parent's goal. So sometimes what's on paper as like an insurance goal or even an IEP goal that has to be academically based, what you have to take into consideration, like what is actually important to the family. And I think that's where collaboration comes in. And as a younger new grad, that was very hard for me because I felt like people thought I didn't know what I was talking about. So I had to prove that I had these tools and I knew how to do this without even thinking like, this is not real life. And with experience and time, I've moved away from that. And I've also, as soon as you become a mother, like my perspective totally changed because again, I know that things that I'm supposed to do, but like my 4-year-old is a fairly picky eater. And it's like, you're an OT, you should know how to feed your child. So I think that like when it comes to parent engagement, you have to have the buy-in before you're going to expect anybody to do anything at home. Because if it's not important to the daily routine or realistic to incorporate into a family routine, then it's not going to happen. And I think that was something that as a therapist, you kind of have to learn with experience and a little bit of age too. I'm not saying that new grads are by any means worse therapists or anything like that, but I feel like I was definitely more that person giving home programs and expecting a lot without even thinking like this is not real life and it's not realistic to do.
Well, what's funny is in contrast at that same facility, there was a PT that was working with us. And I would say her awareness that the implementation of whatever she wanted to work with my son on, her awareness of the difficulty in actually going home and doing anything was so high. And I really appreciated her acknowledging that, like her putting in the space, hey, I get it. Like you have other kids, you have a career, you don't have a child that's going to be like, yay, I want to work hard and exercise my muscles. She totally got the obstacles that we were up against. And where she was so effective is actually essentially like partnering with us to come up with solutions. Because when you can essentially get buy-in, like you were saying, from somebody. And this works exactly the same way as when I work with people as coaching. I mean, I don't give advice as a coach, but we do decide on some things to go ahead and practice out in the world. And it's like, if we don't figure out like the structure that's going to actually allow them to incorporate the intention of whatever they're doing, like it's just not going to happen. We have our pre-programmed thing already going. So another thing that you have talked about is playing. You've shared with me that you believe that there's a big power in play. And a lot of parents that I have talked to, and myself included, have a difficult time sustaining play. Whereas I know this, I sit down with my daughter and I don't know, let's just say 5 minutes goes by and I'm kind of like, I'm done. I'm not feeling as like this is much fun as you are. So how can parents like me be better at playing?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is maybe even just doing a simple like search on the internet of where your child should be like level wise when it comes to play, because it's obviously different if you have a 4-year-old who's very much in like imaginative play and they want to be acting these things out, as opposed to maybe like tween who doesn't necessarily want to do those things. So I think before even like just taking a inventory of like, okay, what can I expect? Because if you take your 12-year-old and say like, let's play dinosaurs, like it's not gonna.
I can do the older ones. The older ones are easy. It's this like it's sustaining the imagine like that is harder for a lot of parents that I talk to.
Yeah, I think that it can definitely take like practice, and I think one way that is helpful is to kind of like take something that they enjoy and almost just like follow what they're doing, like literally just imitate what they are doing. If they are moving their dinosaur one way, then you can move your dinosaur that way, and they start to see like you're doing what I'm doing, and then you can kind of get into a back and forth that way, and recognizing that this doesn't have to be an hour-long thing. Even like 10 minutes of good quality, I'm right here with you, we are doing this together. That I think that is way more helpful in building that relationship and recognizing like you're willing to get on the floor and sit with me and do this than an hour of I don't know, like sitting near them reading a book while they're doing that. Like it's not just about like the closeness of your body, while that is helpful, but just that I'm watching what you're doing. And even if it's a little bit of faked engagement, like I'm excited about doing this because I am the same way. I don't love doing Transformers every day because that's where my son is right now. Loves Transformers. We'll take like his new thing. He pulls parts of toilet paper off of the toilet paper roll and like makes those into Transformers.
Oh, clever. So we have I like that. He's inventive.
Yeah. I mean, thankfully this wasn't like a year ago when we were like, don't use the toilet paper. Because
that's hilarious.
Yeah, we'll go through like half a roll because he's just pulling it off and he's like, look at my Transformer. And it's like, okay, how many times can we ball up a piece of toilet paper and give it a name and call it a Transformer? But I think just like regularly checking in and like being willing to sit on the floor and get on their level for a good 10 minutes before you say, okay, I need to go make some dinner or something. You've had 10 minutes of quality engagement, uninterrupted, your phone's away. I think that goes a long way. And that doesn't mean that you have to love playing with your kids all the time, because we are adults. We don't have to play that way.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really helpful. I like this. Just copy what she does. Okay. That's what I'm taking. And then also the other thing when you're talking, I realized I'm like, okay, also like, cause sometimes like when we're playing imaginative stuff, I'm thinking, okay, we have to like go with the plot line and we have to like really like flesh this out. And I'm realizing, okay, like just let it go. Like it doesn't make sense. The story does not make sense. This is not conceivable. This would not work. Just go with it.
Yeah. I think with art projects too, like that's another example. Like it took me a long time to be okay with the way that things look like that. No, move that sticker over. Okay. And just being like, okay, whatever, like it looks fine. So yeah, giving away that control and just being okay with whatever happens. Your presence and being there is more important than how, I don't know, how things play out. Like
letting all the Play-Doh colors mix together, or letting the Lego sets get all disheveled. Like I'm so good on this now, but like, it's so hard for me to like have this like new Lego set. It's all, put together, they build it, and then to see it like slowly destruct over time. And like, we got one piece in the backyard and we got one piece, I don't know, in my room. And I'm like, this is not how it's supposed to be. But I've let go of it. I still have a hard time throwing any of those Legos away. I always put him in like a bowl on our counter thinking I'll put him back with the Lego stuff. So in case they ever need that shovel for the builder set, they will have it.
Yeah. You know where it is. Play-Doh color mixing. No, you have to take one color at a time. You cannot mix the colors together.
Oh, really? Oh, see, I'm all in. I'm now like, let's see how many colors we can make. But I'm like, then we throw it away afterwards. Cause I'm like, I can't then handle anyhow. Yes, we are all evolving. Yeah. This was so fun to talk to you. And I'm really excited for any parents that didn't see this reel to go and watch it. Of course, we'll put a link on it. And as we wrap up, is there anything else on your heart or mind that you would like to share with my audience?
I think, again, just remembering that as a parent of a child who has different needs, you are the biggest advocate for them. And as they are younger and aren't able to voice necessarily what they need, that you can be that voice. And by you doing that and advocating for them, they will see that and they will learn to do that for themselves. So even when it's hard, and even when it's, it feels like you don't have the strength to raise your voice in a meeting of people who are professionals, quote unquote, and know things that you don't, that your voice is essentially your child's voice. And you have to be strong in the moment. If you have to break down afterwards, that's okay too. But just recognizing that your advocacy for them now will help them be their own advocates in the future. And that is such a powerful tool that really they learn by watching. And again, that you're enough. You are the best parent for your child. Nobody else has your kid. Nobody else has your family. Nobody else has your spouse. Nobody can tell you what is the best for you other than you. And I think just remembering that you're enough.
Thank you. And I think that I know I always appreciate reminders of that. It's something that I'm quick to forget. And so those reminders are something I now consciously allow in. So thank you for being a voice for women and mothers everywhere being enough. Mm-hmm. I will look forward to our next conversation.
Yeah.
So like I said, don't you just love Casey? I'm sure you already have, but make sure you go check out her reel. Again, the link is in the show notes. It'll be easy to find. And I want to make sure you know about one last thing. It is a group coaching program that I created just for you. I'm calling it Being Mom Together. And the idea is that we as special needs moms, we need each other, but we also need to create some awareness about what might be in the way of us experiencing peace that so many of us desire, for us to move away from feeling so out of control and so spun out and so anxious and overwhelmed all the time. This group program is designed to meet you exactly where you're at, to help you become aware of why you're actually feeling all those things. And I know you think it's because you have the child that you do or the life that you do, but you're going to learn that's not necessarily true. And even though you have the same child, and that child's probably not going to change significantly over the course of this program, you will still have access to shifting your entire experience. And I want to share with you what one of the participants has shared with me as a quick little window to what she's gotten out of it. So I will call this client Miss S. And she shared with me that, or I asked her, I said, why did you want to join the group? What made you say yes? And she said she knew she wanted to join some kind of support group since becoming a special needs mom. But she was worried about wasting her time on a poorly organized whine sob fest. I love this so much. She said, so this was perfect. It was a support group that was organized and been led by a professional coach. And it's interesting. I think I have the same idea about a support group sometimes. I'm like, I'm not really interested in just talking about just talking to talk. I want to have some purpose and some intention behind why we're meeting, what we're doing, and I want to move forward. I don't want to just stay where I'm at. So this is also what Miss S came for. She also shared that she's already seen tremendous positive change in her way of thinking since joining Being Mom Together. That her thoughts and feelings in 6 weeks have changed more than in the entire past year of counseling and therapy. And another obstacle she had in signing up was it sounded phony or cheesy, too good to be true. But what she's learning is that we're talking about real life with real moms, and that she recognizes that I have been able to guide her to change. So nothing cheesy or phony about it. Can you tell I love this group, that I'm so excited to share it with you? Again, my invitation is to inquire, to sign up for a consult. You can do that by going to the show notes and clicking on a link. I cannot wait to see you there. One more thing before we officially wrap up this show. Sometimes when I'm listening to podcasts, I have the experience of wanting more. I'm listening at the very end thinking, I sure wish that episode didn't end. I invite you, if you feel in any way the same way, I invite you to the Special Needs Mom podcast community, which is a free group that I host on Facebook, where we as a community of fellow moms who listen to this podcast and are experiencing life in similar shoes, get to talk to one another, get to share stories, get to actually interact. I hope you'll consider joining. See you over there.